I'm Richard Taylor. It's the 12th of September 2017 and I'm here at Chesterton Community College for a meeting of the Milton Road Local Liaison Forum, organised by what's now the Greater Cambridge Partnership, the organisation which is responsible for the City Deal investment in Cambridge. I'm not expecting any problems recording this meeting this evening and reporting on it. There's been no problems at previous meetings of this nature, even though there is no right to record, film and tweet these meetings because they're not formal local council, local government meetings as I understand it. So on tonight's agenda we have an update on the project and also the arrangements for upcoming behind closed doors workshops. If there's an opportunity to make a contribution today, I want to push for those workshops to be as open and transparent as possible, even if they're going to be held behind closed doors. Let's at least get the dates of them published. Let's get the agendas for what's going to be discussed at each of them so we can lobby those people who are invited, councillors and others, so that we can lobby them in a timely fashion. And let's get, if we can, any presentations that are made at those behind closed doors workshops, let's get those published. And let's make sure that those people who are invited to the behind closed doors private workshops know that they are behind closed doors private workshops, because some councillors and other people might well decide not to participate if they realise that that they are behind closed doors private workshops. Previously there have been 5 slots for members of the public. I'm going to suggest that we have some more transparency around that as well. Let's openly advertise the applications process, have the criteria set and publish the judgments with reasons as to whether or not applications are accepted or rejected. And let's have the contact details for everybody who is invited to the workshop so that people can get in touch with them before the workshops happen. I'd like to see a full invites list and a list of who's actually attending. I'm concerned that we need to make sure that all bodies, or every group of people who have an interest are represented. So, for example, are the traders between Arbury Road and Elizabeth Way Junction, do they have someone representing them? What about the traders towards the city end? Are they represented? Is their representative turning up? And the police, who's turning up for the police, if anybody? Is it the local police, or is it people with specific expertise in road safety? On the road safety point, also, if I get the opportunity, I want to point out that the Chisholm Trail Local Liaison Forum, the equivalent meeting for another project, is receiving or is due to receive, has been promised, the safety assessment documents on a regular basis. Why aren't we getting that for the Milton Road project? Anyway, I'm going to go in. The meeting's probably due to start in about 5 minutes' time, I'd expect, or 3 minutes' time. So I'm going to go in and observe, report and hopefully participate usefully in this discussion about the remodelling of Milton Road. That's a £23 million still Greater Cambridge Partnership, Greater Cambridge City Deal project, which hopefully, or seems to during the life of the project, it's turned from a bus priority project into a pedestrian and cycle safety project. I think it's going to be a great thing for the city, really connecting up the science and business parks with the city centre. Great to have central government investment in the city. I think this is a good project. I do live on the road. I do have an interest, personal interest, but I think it's great for the city and great for the nation as well. So anyway, let's see if I can do something useful this evening by sort of attending and actively participating.
With the content of the minutes from the previous time. So may we accept that we agree the minutes of the last meeting and that I'll then proceed with the chair's update. But people, I also do have apologies. Councillor Anna Bradley has apologised because she has another meeting that she could not avoid. Councillor Martin Smart is in a meeting with Councillor Sargent and he has not yet managed to arrive, but he is on his way. And Councillor Richards on her way, but she's just tied up at another meeting and she's coming also. I don't have apologies from any other councillors.
Councillor Price is in the meeting and he will be on his way.
Councillor Price, thank you, thank you. So we'll take it that they're intending to be here, but unfortunately they're running late. But I'm very pleased that nobody else here is running late, and I'll give the update. It'll be a very brief update, and I just simply want to say this, that at the meetings of the Greater Cambridge Partnership Assembly, and at the meeting of the Greater Cambridge Partnership Board, Executive Board, the design concept that had been created out of the Do Optimum, which is the Residents Association's plan, working together with Matthew Danish, and then we all approved it. That plan was used as the basis for the concept that has gone forward through the City Deal Board, or the Greater Cambridge Partnership Board. And if anybody here is interested and has not yet caught up, I am very happy to show you the document where the officers went through each of our recommendations, the LLF recommendations that had arisen out of the workshops with the full involvement of residents and their response to them. And what I can say is that the vast bulk of the recommendations that we made were simply accepted. There were some modifications, but they were not huge modifications. So I'm very happy to show that to anybody who is interested, so that you can see that the residents have had a huge impact on what has come out as the concept that will now be addressed through workshops and through concept design groupings, further discussing this concept so that it can incorporate our ideas about bus stops, our ideas about what trees we should have in our avenue of trees and other aspects. And so I'll hand over to Paul Vanderbilt, who is the officer who is in charge of this project. Chris Tunstall's above him, and Paul will now go through how it is intended to go forward with this concept, and so that we can have further input before it finally goes out to consultation. And Paul will explain the workshop process and the concept design groupings that are going to work on the concept, the overall general concept, to make it into what it is that we want to have for Milton Road, as far as what we want to have can be approved through the consultation and then through the Assembly and the Board. So I hand over to Paul and thank Paul and the officers for coming and organising this meeting, and all of you for attending. So thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks, President. I'll probably stay here if that's okay, and I haven't got the microphone, so can everybody hear me? The microphone, we can't get it working for some reason. So sorry about that. So yeah, tonight we want to just go through the engagement process that we hope to set out through the autumn, that will hopefully allow members of the LLF and other stakeholders, residents, to kind of engage with us in terms of some of the conceptual elements of design that we still haven't finalised, bus stops, crossings, and trees, as Joshua had said. But we also want to set out some more detailed design groups, and I'll go through the presentation now. It's the easiest way to kind of lead you through it. First of all, is there anyone here who hasn't been to an LLF before? Okay. So I'll just go through quickly then the objectives of the project that were originally set out. As you may know, the first objective was to set out comprehensive priority for buses in both directions along Milton Road. There is more detail behind the objective that's been set out live before. I haven't got it on these slides, but we've discussed that in the past. If you want to find out kind of what's been said regarding these objectives, then you can access the website, and I can show you where that is if you're interested. Secondly, safer and more convenient routes for cycling and walking, segregated where practical and possible. And I think that's something that was really picked up by the new optimum that was developed by the LLF and actually by Matthew Danish here from the cycling campaign. And we've taken a lot of what was set out in that new optimum into the final concept design. Another objective is to enhance the environment and the streetscape and air quality. Further objectives that kind of relate to public transport, so additional capacity for sustainable trips. That also includes cycling. Increased bus patronage in new services, and to maintain or reduce traffic levels along Milton Road. So we're not looking to make Milton Road inaccessible for cars. We want to kind of maintain some ability for general traffic to flow along Milton Road, but we're also looking to enhance all the other aspects. So, Jocelyn alluded to the executive board, and some of the things that they agreed to, they also noted a few things, but the things that the executive board agreed to, they approved the final concept design as the basis for detailed design work, and the preparation of an interim business case, and that's something we need to look at as we go through the process of detailed design, is to actually build up a business case for Milton Road. They also agreed that wherever space permits, we still need to look at incorporating as many of the aspects of the auction as we can. So obviously that design remains in the background. We'll consult with the LLF and the various people who designed or put together the auction to ensure that we could fulfil that objective. The Executive Board supported further engagement with the LLF, which is partly why I'm here tonight. Another thing that we have been mentioning over time, and actually spent some time today standing outside this area, just have a little look at it, and we've also started putting together a list of property owners so that we can begin the discussions, is that we want to talk with kind of property owners of the shops. There's two main areas of shops on Milton Road, one near Arby Road and the other one down near Mitchell's Corner. We want to talk with those owners to see if they have any interest in working with us to develop the areas that are off the highway limits, to basically bring improvement to those parking areas, I guess. So we'll see how that goes. And then further objective that was actually added was to supplement development of the scheme with further consideration of means of achieving modal shift public transport. And we need to kind of look at how we can approach that new objective that was set by the board. So in terms of elements of design going forward, you see the first point recognises the significant time and effort that's been put into this project. Firstly by the LLF, because it's kind of, you put your time into this. You didn't have to come to these meetings, but you all have, and you contributed a lot to the scheme. And also to the officers and to WSP, who have obviously been involved in the scheme from day one and done a lot of work to kind of get it to where it is now. Again, the second point recognises that the LLF has played an important role in getting the project to where it is. And the purpose of tonight is to look at how we can hold workshops to cover the areas that we didn't consider in the concept design. And final point, which I mentioned before, we also would like to have some LLF representation in some more small focused detailed design groups. We haven't quite worked out exactly how they will operate, but we want to set it out now that we're looking for some involvement. Some of the things that we have to get done, I mentioned before, we have to develop an outline business case. This will enable the board to actually commit the expenditure that is kind of there to be committed to the delivery of the scheme. And a critical element of this is to develop the benefit cost ratio. And I'm sure Neil will be working quite hard to kind of assist with that process. And I've also asked Neil to kind of look at how we can kind of incorporate the cycling elements so that they actually, you know, stand out within that whole process. For a successful benefits cost ratio to meet the objective of the scheme, we obviously have to look to deliver improvements to the alternative methods and modes of transport, particularly in public transport reliability. One of the objectives of the project initially was to obviously to improve public transport, to encourage modal shift of public transport. So we need to ensure that we actually deliver that objective amongst all the other things that we want to deliver. And the final slide, if it's not possible to demonstrate this, obviously we risk of not being able to justify the project and the amount of money that's going to be spent on it. So it is still a key consideration that we have to keep it in mind. I'll come to that slide later. So, looking forward, I'm now going to go through what we're proposing. And the text of this is quite small, so I'm going to read some of it. We've got 3 types of engagement that we envisage. First of all, workshops. And we're hoping that workshops will enable us to capture kind of a wide range of views from the LLF into the key design areas not yet discussed, which we'll come to in a minute. I've mentioned before the group. For each workshop, we'll obviously send out an agenda and an overview to the attendees prior to the sessions. We'll look for a short introductory presentation from the kind of key experts in the field. And what we want to do is to run these as kind of small groups, so we'll have basically a number of tables in the workshop, and we're going to employ the use of facilitators to ensure that the conversation on those tables runs smoothly and keeps to the topic that we need it to. And we're looking for perhaps 25 people at the workshops, so 25, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but we're looking for 25 plus any officers and consultants.
25 max.
Yeah, so there'll be 25 spaces, and then obviously we'll have Neil will be in attendance, and we'll have facilitators as an additional. So one of the things I want to do tonight is kind of to get some understanding of who might be interested to attend those workshops. So we can do that afterwards in kind of discussion period, that would be great. The second element is down there is detailed design groups. So for certain key concepts, I think we need to focus. You'll see what I mean when I come to this. But there's a few elements of the design that I think need a special focus, and where I think we need to have some input into the process, and just to kind of act as an overview and perhaps put some ideas into the design process for these areas. And we'll come to it in a minute. But the small focus areas, they might involve the odd meeting here and there, but they will involve kind of various stakeholders from the local authorities and other specialist stakeholders in the design areas that we're going to talk about. And a lot of the engagement might be via email or various communications, but the odd meeting here and there. So the other thing is I'll be looking for 1 or 2 representatives from the LLF on those various design groups. And then obviously we'll have the public meetings, so we aim to have first, I'll come to it when we aim to have it, but public meetings, LLFs such as this, stakeholder meetings, will enable us to present back the results from the workshops and from the detailed design groups. And obviously we'll run those as presentations with the ability for questions and answer sessions and open to the public. So as many as attendees as want to come really fit in this hall. So, bus stops and crossings. We're looking to hold the workshops at the early stages of this, so we've actually got this down for next week and I believe you've sent out invites to the LLF already, to the LLF members, and we hope to obviously get a few additional people, maybe from residents, representing residents on Milton Road, to sign up to the workshops tonight. So the first workshop on the 19th, we're looking to address bus stops and crossings. What time?
In the evening.
Yeah, in the evening. The workshop's in the evening, probably 6:30 on the 19th, if we can push it to that late.
Yeah.
6:30, is that okay?
Yeah.
And the workshop will probably go on to 2.25 hours. Obviously there'll be some flexibility, so if you need to leave early, you can leave early. So for bus stops and crossings, we're looking to identify preference for bus stop designs, and Neil's got a range of bus stop designs that kind of exist already. Stagecoach may have a couple more, I'm not sure, after today's discussion I had around Campbell. And, you know, there may be the opportunity if anyone has got an outstanding design, I'm sure Neil will consider it. We also want to look at the location of bus stops and crossings based around the concept design. So we obviously know where the bus stops are at the moment. Are there any issues with the current locations? Is there a requirement for further locations, or, you know, are there too many bus stops at the moment? Are there too few? Those kind of questions. A bit later on the 3rd of October, we're looking to hold a workshop on trees, landscaping and public spaces. And at that workshop, for bus stops and crossings, I'm hoping that WSP will be preparing kind of the material for that workshop. And we're in the process of doing that now and working with facilitators to ensure the material is there. So we'll hopefully be getting something out this week in terms of
Yeah.
for trees, landscape and public spaces. I'm holding a meeting with the City Council specialist in trees next week, and we're hoping to have them leading, or at least providing a lot of the material for the workshop, and also have had discussions with Kieran Parkins, who I believe was involved in this group some time ago with regard to landscaping. So hopefully they will be the ones providing the specialist input to that workshop. We will also employ the same facilitators in the workshop, so hopefully it will run in a similar way. So I'm looking for a presentation to clarify planting guidelines and kind of the things that need to be considered in terms of how we make sure that the trees actually grow properly and healthily. And as I mentioned before, involving clearing. The discussion should be around the preference for tree types, and I'm hoping that the City Council will be able to bring along kind of a range of options regarding tree types, and we'll be able to have some discussion over kind of what preferences are. Second point, what the residents want from the trees along Milton Road. And finally, regarding landscaping, so the identification of public space opportunities. So there's a number of areas along the road where there's kind of slightly larger areas where maybe some landscaping can be done. Right, the text is even smaller there, so I apologise for that, but we have to fit quite a lot in. So the detailed design groups. So we've got I've identified 4 design groups that I want to set up. The first one is around Elizabeth Way roundabout. We've obviously got kind of a broad concept for the roundabout. I think as we presented it at the last LLF, there was kind of a general feeling that, you know, the concept was okay, but it could do with some further refinement. So we want to ensure that the design works, and that we have the best input from various specialists and some members of the LLF, perhaps, and the cycling campaigns, my cycle team at the County Council. All of those kind of people need to have some kind of involvement in that final design. So we're looking to have that as a detailed design group. We've got Mitcham's Corner as another design group. Currently I'm uncertain exactly what's going to happen at Mitcham's Corner. but I'm aware, and I've asked for a meeting with the City Council so that they can go over with me what their ambition is. I've also had an initial meeting with the Friends of Mitcham's Corner to kind of get an understanding of what they represent and what they want. But for me, Mitcham's Corner is a bit of a problem at the moment because it obviously interacts with Milton Road, and if big changes are made to Mitcham's Corner with regard to traffic and other transport modes, it could have quite a large impact on Milton Road. So I want to be sure that kind of I've got the best understanding of what might happen there as possible, and that understanding is obviously passed to the design team for Milton Road. Another area that I want to look at is to look at the cycle lane, sort of cycle lane stroke highway usage between Mitcham's Corner and Elizabeth Way roundabout. This area was probably the hardest to design, the hardest to fit everything into, and there are a few issues that have been highlighted before, through the site basically, and things that we've thought about. So the first of those issues is how do you manage cycling, parking, bus lane, highway on the little section in front of the shops as you approach Mitcham's Corner. So I want that to be looked at and to ensure that we get a safe and useful kind of solution there. Secondly, between Gilbert Road and the Elizabeth Way roundabout, that section of road is quite narrow. There is ambition, I think Chris Tunstall promised that we would look to see if we could get trees on both sides of the road, because in the final concept we only had trees on one side of the road in that section. So we need to look at how we can achieve that. And there's been a few ideas on how we could kind of design the cycling facilities along that stretch, which I want to discuss during that kind of within that group of people. And then finally, I want to set up a design group to look at bus lane lengths. I think bus lane lengths has been highlighted as a remaining issue where it's felt that we need to justify the requirement for the lengths that were presented in the final concept. So I've asked, Neil's started to look at this already, and I've asked them to do some research and look around, further around the country to see if there's any good examples of how people have approached this. I'm sure that it's quite a difficult science to achieve, to exactly link kind of the modelling and kind of the knowledge to actually coming up with a definitive length, but we somehow need to justify the bus lane lengths that exist in the concept. So that's another one. And then in terms of presenting to the LLF and the public, so we're looking to hold an LLF perhaps in November, says straight December there, to discuss the workshop outcomes. So once all the outcomes have been collated, the designers have had a chance to kind of digest what the LLF have said, look at kind of all of the elements that they need to look at and put everything together. They will be able to present what's come out of those to the wider group. And then because the preferred options design, or the detailed preferred options design, is going to the LLF board probably in March, we are looking to hold a final LLF in January to basically to present the final preferred option design to the LLF and to get any feedback from that before it goes to the board. So that's what it looks like on the timeline. So we've got workshops in black in September and early October. The detailed design groups will probably operate through October and into November, and then the workshop, the LLFs, November, December, and then January 2018. As I said a minute ago, the aim is to have reached a preferred option design by early 2018, ready for the March Assembly and Executive Board. And now, it would be good to have some discussion and any feedback on that kind of programme of works, and possibly also to gauge some interest in attending the workshops and design groups.
Right, thank you very much, Paul. And we didn't introduce everybody at the beginning, but we'll do it unorthodoxly at the end, so that you all know who's present. It's just that some people have come late, and so it's better to do it that way. But let's move into questions now. I see, Charles, you have something you'd like to raise.
Paul, you rightly indicated that bus lanes continuing difficult subject. You sent me earlier a very clear explanation of how it had, why it couldn't all be done at the start, which is what I wanted. I think it might be helpful if you explain that to the meeting, so other people don't have to go at it as I did.
And then let me explain. My voice has just gone.
That's fair enough. So, yeah, as Charles has raised, sorry, Neil Milton, project manager on the consultant side of WSP. A few of you will have met me at a few of these meetings we've had in the past. So working jointly with Paul in developing the scheme as we go forward. So in terms of bus lane lanes, so I appreciate there is kind of conflicting views and wanting to kind of have some justification between what's left of the bus lane, or the bus lanes we've got in the scheme at present. There's a number of elements we need to do to help rationalise those and come to a final conclusion, and we need time to do those, and that's why we can't jump straight into that element of it, although I appreciate it's important for people to discuss. So first of all, we need to have bottomed out a lot of other factors along the road in order to influence how long the bus lane lengths are. Key to those are the junctions. They're very important in terms of understanding. So, as Paul said, we need to understand what's happening at Mitchell's Corner. We need to bottom out what's happening at Elizabeth Way. We need to refine those other junctions. They all have an impact on the queue lengths, as we've kind of demonstrated through the other work we've done to get to the final concept. And those will all have an impact on bus lane lengths. Other scenarios we need to look at as well are in terms of growth scenarios. So what is the council believing is going to be the longer term growth? And is that probably factored into the modelling at the moment? So we'll do some sensitivity testing to look at if that was higher or lower, how that might affect the queuing and therefore the bus lane lengths. It may be that it doesn't vary a great deal, but we need to factor that into as being as robust as possible. Once these are obviously put in place, there's a potential, I guess, in the long-term future that some of them could be reduced once, but you can't really extend them. So we don't want to get to a point where we put in bus lanes and they're just not long enough to actually do the job and the bus is still getting stuck. That's kind of the worst situation because they're then being put in place, they're not actually doing their job, and they're not being used for other purposes. So we want to be as robust as possible in identifying that for you. So all that additional kind of modelling takes time, and we're going to have to, we want to present when we have these workshop groups as much information as possible and have that refined as much as possible so that we've got some real strong data to present to you and talk around that and how it affects the design. We've obviously undertaken initial modelling which has informed the concept design at the moment, and that's the basis which we can undertake these other elements of workshops and design discussions around. And I don't believe any of the workshops as we've structured it will be abortive in that. They're all elements, the way they're structured, the workshops will receive information which we can use regardless of where the bus lane lengths are. So for example with the bus stop design, we'll be looking for you to select a preference on a bus stop located on a bus lane and not on a bus lane. So because those will be the case in terms of along the road anyway. So all the time that you're putting in won't be wasting any of these, and it will all constitute together, which is a bit patient in terms of us being able to look at the bus lane lengths at the end of the process, because we need the other elements to be finalised before we can have a view on what that means for queuing and therefore bus lanes along Milton Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just realised that if we around the table answer questions, it would be good if we did introduce ourselves so that people do know who we are here on the LLF. And I see that Michael, you have a question. I think Dawn, and there was a third or go ahead, Michael.
Michael Bond, Old Chester Residents Association. On the subject of bus lanes, there are two things that certainly I find disconcerting about them. One is, do they need to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? If you're looking at them as means of collecting revenue, the answer to that is yes. But if you're regarding them as purely a traffic management thing, the answer for the most part is no, because for the greater part of the week, there is no congestion problem on Milton Road. The other thing is that if we are going to have bus lanes and cycle lanes, can we please have a restriction on cyclists using the bus lane? Because they hold up buses. And there's not much point in having a bus lane which is restricted to a bus travelling at 6 miles an hour because they just don't use them. And we've seen that already in various bus lanes that already exist. So I think we need to get some sensible consideration of maximising the advantage, if we are going to have them, and not allow them to be obstructed by traffic, for which other provision has already been made.
Personally, I agree with your second point. I'm going to address them 2 points. I also agree with your second point, and I've asked if that is possible. The answer I get back is, I think it is possible. Is it possible? It's possible to put the sign up. It's hard to police.
How do you enforce it?
It's hard to enforce. So, yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that, and I will continue to ask the question, is that a possible solution? I think it's a valid point. In terms of your first point, regarding bus lane next, I'm going to hand over to Neil on that.
I mean, you're right that what we're putting bus lanes and what we're looking at is a worst case, the busiest point in which what we're looking for is bus reliability. That's a key element of the scheme. It's a key element that the board will want to see improvements on to sign off on the money for the scheme as a whole, and that we needed to create the benefit cost ratio in the business case to justify the expenditure of money on the road, because that is a key element. So we need to achieve bus reliability improvements for the scheme to go ahead. So therefore, yes, it ends up being that the bus lanes are there to ensure the reliability on the busiest periods, and outside of that, you won't need as much bus lane there because the traffic is free moving. In terms of whether you can therefore then have the bus lanes operating at certain peak periods, the difficulty is, again, how do you sign, control that? It can often lead to infrastructure like gantries. So if you think about some of their hard shoulder running, where they turn the lanes on and off, it's how do you instruct when that's applicable and when it isn't. You can have timings around the bus lanes in terms of, peak periods is when they're in use, and outside of that, as some of the bits of bus lanes are elsewhere in the country, you have the ability that other people can use those outside of those peak times. So that's something that's potentially controllable. But it's really around how you can, how you sign and control that usage without creating a lot of extra street highway infrastructure, which is probably not particularly nice to look at on a street such as Milton Road with houses facing onto it. So that's the difficulty really of it. So yes, we'll be planning for the busiest period. Ideally that's when it's needed. It's just coming up with looking at the potential solutions that are there and seeing which ones are possible to implement.
Thank you.
I would just like to echo the first point that Michael made about the use of the bus lanes. I actually live on Milton Road itself. I live at 232 Milton Road. That's just about 6 houses away from the Arbory Road traffic lights. And my personal experience as a child, my personal experience is that that bus lane, that section approaching the junction is necessarily useful.
Yeah.
But that most of the times of day, and this is what I'm saying because I actually live there, this is personal experience, it is hardly ever used, and I'm sure this has been said in earlier workshops and so on, that buses actually carry on in the normal carriageway for substantial parts of the day. So really we're only talking about the rush hour, and even in the rush hour, a shorter length would probably be okay. Now, also, the other question I have is we're constantly told about modelling, and I'm afraid I'm rather naive about this. I don't quite understand what modelling is. But one of the things that I had wondered about was whether, instead of just listening politely to anecdotal evidence such as my own personal experience, there could be, say, a video camera or something like that, which would be actually recording how often buses currently use that bus lane during term time, school term time, weekdays, weekends, and outside term time, and having that as evidence of the data. But maybe that's within your modelling, I don't know. But I've never seen a video camera there, and I don't understand why it can't be done.
So traffic surveys are undertaken along Milton Road, and that informs the base level of the data. So in the model, we try and represent the current situation of traffic at peak periods. That's where the model focuses.
But how do you do that?
So we take traffic surveys. Traffic surveys have been undertaken along Milton Road. We then build a model of the road, and then we try and make sure it replicates the data, so that the queues built are relative to the lengths that were judged in the survey.
I'm sorry, but could you explain to me what you mean by traffic survey? When you stop cars and ask them...
No, sorry, no. So we will have, so those rubber strips you see sometimes across the road, you ever see that? So you sometimes see double rubber strips. So those count the traffic that's coming past. So usually they're called an automatic traffic counter, and usually have them down for a week, say. And then each junction you will usually then have the cameras, and those will then judge the queue lengths and see the timing of the junction and the movements that are happening. And those come back as video surveys that are then looked at and identified in terms of data.
This data has been done.
This data has been undertaken.
Exams and outside.
Yeah, and to have a model that basically, so we have to look, as I've said, kind of at a, we can't look outside of term time because what's accepted in terms of looking at the modelling is we have to look at a neutral month. So we have to look at a period. So surveys won't be undertaken outside of school time because that doesn't represent the kind of average situation of the road. What we're trying to capture within the surveys is the average situation. So what the Department for Transport states that we need to undertake these surveys within a neutral month to get that data so it's representative. Because to validate the model, we've got to validate it to a period. We can't really validate it to lots of different periods. So we've got to pick the most average situation in which to do that. Also, what we've got to consider is we're not necessarily just looking to model for today. We're looking for 2031 and the delivery of 9,000, 10,000 houses at Water Beach. And a key element of that is how that affects the traffic coming down Milton Road. So what we're trying to predict is, in terms of bus lane length, etc., and that's why we need a model, is to look at what the future holds, not just the current situation and how it's used at the moment, how the future use would be.
Yes,
and I appreciate that is difficult to kind of to look at, but that's why we have to have a model and to try and look at something in terms of estimation and looking forward. So it's not just anecdotal.
Yes, but an element of that is obviously why people are going down the road, and because we talked about rush hours and the new employment in the city centre, which would oblige people to go to church and charging down the road. And I haven't seen anything which has explained how much new employment is going to be in the city centre to encourage people to do that. But that's a separate issue, but I just think it's something that is
so there is a just to try and answer that, there's a there's a Cambridge sub-regional model, and that looks at the whole of the city as a whole, looks at all the development coming forward internally within the city and outside of it, and looks to make those predictions of where people will go. So it has factors in economic factors in terms of where employment might be, in terms of the cost of travel and whether people might choose to take a bike or a bus or a car. It tries to do all those elements, and we use that to feed into our more detailed model of what that future prediction is. So there is a wider consideration of all the predictions of what Cambridge might be like in 2031 in terms of growth, which is set out. Each district will set out its local plan for its projections of where that growth might be. So we have a basis in which to base that, and that's being consistently used for all the city deal schemes. So we have a same basis for the future that we'll use it.
Yes, I understand that. But when you talk about the number of houses that are being built in Woodford, they're not all going to be coming into Cambridge down Milton Road.
No, we're not saying that they necessarily are, but it's a proportion of them.
Yeah.
Could we move on so that we allow everybody to ask about? I can see there are lots of hands. Now, there was one just down here, then Mike Sargent, and then the two at the back, and if we could have each after the other, and then if Neil or Paul could respond, but please don't respond after each question, because then we can get more questions and issues raised. And then Martin, we'll have 5. And as long as you've got a pencil that you can take.
Yeah, we're not very good using
Okay, here, then Mike, then 2 down the back, and then Martin, so that's 5.
5, okay.
Right, off you go. Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question about the queuing that you say is going to happen at junctions, and that dictates the length of the bus lane. And then you say, well, you know, there's going to be lots of traffic coming, or maybe traffic coming in from the new development at Waterbeach. Now, Waterbeach is quite a long way outside Cambridge, and you have a series of traffic lights before you get to Milton Road. And I'm just wondering, is there any modelling or any technology which is going to actually use those traffic lights to be able to regulate the flow of traffic so that actually you don't get bunching at junctions as you come down Milton Road, which then means that you don't have to have such long bus lanes?
Good. Mike.
Right, Councillor Mike Sargent. I mean, certainly Neil mentioned about the local plan, and in fact tonight we were discussing at the City Council plans for the Grafton Centre and expanding the amount of retail at the Grafton Centre, and that's all part of the local plan going through to 2031. So we're actually saying this is where we expect growth in terms of housing, this is where we expect growth in terms of retail, this is where we expect growth in terms of employment. And that obviously will give us some information about what the traffic flows are likely to change, because we are creating these spaces with different uses. The question I wanted to add on to Neil really was, we talked about controlling, how we might have the bus lanes at different times of the day. And one of the problems, of course, we've got at the moment on Milton Road between Gilbert Road and Mitchell's Corner is that the bus lane is used as a parking zone at the moment. And I just wanted to ask Neil, would it be far more difficult to regulate in the way we have done on Newmarket Road, the cars driving in the bus lane, if it was actually only for part of the day, say 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening? I don't know if we've built that in, or we've got experience at other places, but I'd like to know, are we looking at it? Do we have any feeling how that might do? Because I assume that will mean a lot of cameras on Milton Road to catch people driving and parking in the bus lane.
Two up there. Yes. Yes, you.
You've talked about the aspiration for modal shift, so you must have a figure for the current balance on Milton Road of the traffic between buses, particularly local bus, cycling, pedestrians and cars. So what is the current balance? What are the percentages on the road?
Good. And then yes.
So apologies for raising again on a broken record of the issue faced by those residents who currently only have on-site parking provision. Previously we had about people in the resolution to do an audit of residents who don't have on-site parking provision. And previously in these meetings we've been led to believe that that would be something which would be looked at during the more detailed forward workshops, but I see no reference to that in the headings or the points. Is that something which will be looked at?
Right. Then that's a spot-on question in that I've just been reminded that we are supposed to be focusing on the forward plan and what we think of that and what questions we have about that. But let's come to Councillor Martin Smart. We'll deal with these 5 and then we'll go on to questions about the workshop plan and the design concept groupings and so forth as people have them. Thank you, Councillor Smart.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be quick. Just 3 quick things, an observation, a story and a question. So the observation is that last autumn when we started these workshops, and maybe before, my memory doesn't go back that far, but we talked about the local community feeding into the process of designing the scheme, but the local community have actually designed the scheme. And there are aspects of that design that I don't agree with. So coming in as a councillor, I always want to support residents, so you elect me obviously next time round. But I hope you forgive me if I disagree with you on some aspects, especially the cycle lanes that have come out of this process. The second point is a story which relates to Michael's point about bus lanes, which we've spoken about before. So my son has recently started a job at the top of Milton Road, and he cycles there. And knowing my son like I do, he's very much like our pet cat, and we joke about our cat doing what he wants to do. So Monty does what Monty wants, and Jack will do what he wants. So when he cycles within the law, obviously, he will go the quickest way. And if the bus lane is the easiest, quickest route for him to take, he will take it. And that's no disrespect to Jack, but that's like most people who are in a hurry to get to work will do that. So I think the answer, Michael, is that the cycle lane needs to be the best thing possible. It needs to be fit for purpose, the right way to go, the quickest, easiest, most efficient way, not the bus lane.
I agree.
And thirdly, on the bus lanes, just a question. In some parts of the world, electric cars are allowed to use the bus lanes. Will that be the case on Milton Road?
Right. Yes, so the first idea asked around, obviously there's a number of junctions before you get to Milton Road in terms of traffic that might come from Water Beach, and how would that be managed? Would that get to a point where we can manage that? So it would have queuing, the flow of traffic. Yes, that is considered in terms of the wider model, this Cambridge regional model. Some elements of that and schemes that are coming forward, like the A10, are built into that in terms of junction improvements that results in on the way to Milton Road. So there is consideration of that that feeds into the model as the point at which our model picks it up. With all the traffic coming through, there is each that has staging in terms of the traffic light, etc. Which what we've done in our model of Milton Road is make sure that the junctions and the point of modelling is we have is so each junction influences another, so that how you alter one, you can have an influence another, and how you might do the staging. Particularly with signals, you have the ability to control them together, so you can send those kind of platoons of traffic down. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can, in all the best will in the world, you can limit queuing to a certain extent, but otherwise, if we could do it now, we would already be doing it to stop any queuing happening at the moment. So there are limits to what we can do, but we are considering, and there is factored in the other junctions that feed to the point where our detail model starts.
And these, I mean, is it possible to actually phase things on a daily basis rather than?
Yeah, so you can have something called a scoop system. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's essentially a AI that controls, that overviews the traffic lights. So we have loops, you might see those cut into the ground at junctions. Those monitor when traffic's on top of them, and that can influence the traffic light changes. So they can talk to one another if that's in place, and they can even have different phasing depending if it's a peak period or an off-peak period. So that kind of technology is something definitely that will be incorporated.
A smooth flow.
That's the aim, but obviously it gets to a point sometimes where junctions get to an absolute saturation capacity. That happens at the moment, and what we're trying to do is fit in a lot of other uses around these junctions. The main aim of this work isn't to resolve the congestion issues at the junctions. That isn't the core aim. It's to be able to facilitate other measures to get this mode shift change. So we will still have problems with the junctions reaching saturation, and that's when the queuing.
Good. Right, let's move on. You were next, Mike, about you were about people's harm.
In terms of bus lanes and how you regulate to stop cars parking in them, as you've probably said, one way to do that is, and probably if you want to be completely enforced, is cameras on the bus lanes. In terms of whether you could just have that during particular periods, if it was signed that you could use those outside of those periods, then the camera would still be there, but it wouldn't be issuing fines outside of that period. So that happens elsewhere in the country where you can use it generally. If they keep it consistent, so you don't want to make it so confusing that some people feel they're getting caught or not coming into Cambridge fresh, they don't really see that. So generally it's kind of outside the peak and in the peak is when the kind of might be engaged. But that again, it accounts for more infrastructure on the street, and that might be part of the discussion whether people want cameras along the road policing the bus lanes. There might maybe be people who want that, but that is the main way really to enforce, other than having a traffic patrol. But it's then, cuts as they are, how would you can guarantee necessarily there will be someone patrolling In terms of movement split at the moment, we do have that data. I'm afraid I don't know off the top of my head in terms of, but we can get that from census data, so the last one was 2011, but we don't feel that necessarily changes too much. We can potentially
Beth might be able to answer this in terms of the big conversation.
Sorry, which particular question?
in terms of what the kind of mode split is at the moment, say Milton Road within Cambridge, in terms of how people travel.
Just thought you might mention.
This is a really important figure that this whole process should be referring to, because if you're trying to improve buses and nobody was interested in buses, you could waste more time. Or at the moment the bus use is low. People aren't aware of that.
The key consideration is a lot of it is your origin and destination. So you choose your mode depending on, so as we said, Waterbeach is coming forward, and many people, and we've said there's quite a lot of junctions between Waterbeach and town. People might feel that that's too far for them to cycle, and therefore they're going to make their mode choice based on that. They may make their mode choice on the fact they can't park their car at the other end of the journey, therefore that's out of the equation, and therefore they're going to take the bus. They're going to base it on price. There's lots of other elements, and we'd have to look across. In terms of mode split, we'd probably give it to you in terms of Cambridge, but just saying Milton Road.
So what I was asking is, have you made the effort to measure it at the moment, like by counting bikes or anything like that?
So we've got cycle surveys that occurred down the road. We redid those quite recently, and pedestrian walking surveys to help inform, particularly when we get to crossings and junctions, to understand how many people are making those movements at the moment. They're a bit harder to predict in terms of what they might be in the future, but we could obviously look at the growth and then apply kind of the mode split that we've got at the moment, or what we hope to achieve in the future with some, movement from city access study and things, so we can create that shift that we could apply to identify.
Yeah, I mean, if Stagecoach decided to put on a sort of local bus service that served Milton Road,
So
obviously that would change it.
Yeah, so other factors, so there's, as we say, Andy Campbell has made a commitment that he will put on an additional service with Waterbeach. That's all we have to bring in the line.
Good. Could we move on to...
Sorry, can I just bring Beth Darby
absolutely.
just to kind of discuss what's going to be going on with the Greater Cambridge Partnership in coming.
I'll be very quick. I think you wanted to talk about engagement this autumn, going out which is a double conversation, and this is to the point that you make around modal shift. What we want to do as part of this is a really big engagement exercise with residents across Cambridge, South Cambridgeshire, and also commuters that travel in and out, to help supplement our database on the current modes of transport that people use currently, and also their propensity to move to a different mode and the incentives they would need in order to do that. So we have the census data, but as you rightly say, that's 2011. I think one of the criticisms would be that the data is quite old, so we're looking to supplement the data with something that's much more up to date, but also get people really involved in that conversation around what it would be that would make them shift. Or actually, one of the other things we really want to know is who will never use a different form of transport, who won't leave their cars at home, because that's going to be really important to add to the evidence base that we use for this scheme and all the other schemes. So that's being launched week of September 25th. There is actually a page on our website if you want to know what we want.
And of course the railway station, the North Thames North is now.
Yes.
We haven't mentioned it relating to Waterbeach.
We could probably take that into account in workshop discussion. But could we just move to the issue here that was raised by Councillor Smart about aspects with which he disagreed, and the issue about the cycle lanes and taking the easiest and fastest route, and then come back to the question that was directed towards the workshops in the future. And then I know that Councillor Austin and Councillor Manning have questions too. So there was the issue about people going to take the easiest route and how...
Yes, I think just between that we had the lady who...
yes, but that was about workshops,
oh,
and
okay.
so on.
Fine, okay, sorry. In terms of taking the easiest route, yes, we are currently going to put the planning, so we've got the design at the moment, that's gone into a safety audit with the council to have them look at the proposal that stands at the moment and identify any safety concerns that they have which will be a fundamental part of the design process overall in consideration going forward. You're right, the LLF have had a lot of input into the design, and that's why we've worked out this schedule of big workshop discussions where we've got elements we haven't necessarily asked the LLF about before. So where would they like bus stops, where would the crossings best placed, the tree conversation around kind of the species of the tree. And then when we get into these detailed design groups, that we'd like to make sure they're transparent and that we have a representation from the LLF there. But those design groups are really specialists, engineers working on refining that design based around the concept we've got at the moment. So those are kind of a more a live design process in which we want to have a couple of members from the LLF there to feed in elements of it, but essentially it's kind of us working through into a detailed design that we're happy to deliver is safe and can be delivered on the ground essentially. In terms of taking the path of least resistance on a bike, absolutely, and that's why we've got to get the cycle lanes as much as possible correct so that people choose hopefully to take the cycle lanes rather than the bus lanes. But I can't guarantee that once the scheme is put in that someone wouldn't cycle down a bus lane, because how do we control? We can't control those residents of the teenage youth or even adult commuter cyclists at Cambridge. It is a difficult one. It's across Cambridge. I don't know, and then whether we can have electric cars going down, that is probably something that would have to be taken as a general view across Cambridge as a whole. I don't think you wouldn't really make sense to say on this particular road you could take electric cars. It's kind of a decision needs to be made more centrally whether, like taxis can use bus lanes, can electric cars use bus lanes. But yes, that's a good point. Possibly the consideration is we maybe all move into electric and then it just means the bus lane's not a bus lane anymore, it's just another lane of traffic. Maybe not.
Now, just before we do move on to the question about the workshop forward, and if we could direct the questions and the issues that are being raised towards the forward plan. But just before that, on this issue about cyclists and so on, I should report that the Chesterton Community College I've been in touch with, and they are very keen to have the officers come and talk with the students about the use of the about the use of the cycle lanes and how they can best make use of it. And they're very happy to, if they're able to participate in workshops and so on, but they're really keen to have input on what is proposed in Milton Road from the perspective of the students being pedestrians and cyclists at the present time, and I guess motorists in the future, but we hope they'll stick with their cycles as far as possible. But could we then go to the question about the forward plan and what's in the workshop plan and what's not?
So at the moment we've done an audit along the road already, and that's identified all the drop curbs and also identified all the houses that currently don't have a driveway. So we have undertaken that audit. In the Elizabeth Way workshop, we have put in there that we will talk to the residents that have access directly onto the roundabout. And as part of that, there's a good point, we could also then engage as part of that process, or maybe as a sub-process to that, talking with residents. We are, and I think that's shown in the draft concept, there are some initial lay-bys that are put on there, but if there's elements where we need to consider additional lay-bys for servicing of properties.
From that, thank you for doing that audit. I wondered whether it's possible or would be useful to contact those properties so that they're aware of that workshop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something so part of the process, it's envisaged that all properties will be contacted anyway to ask whether a lot of them have, they don't have a drop curb themselves, they use their neighbours, or I've shown some examples before where 3 doors down, so someone drives onto the pavement, drives 3 doors down and then drives into their drive, so they've never enacted a drop curb. So all residents will be contacted to see if they wanted to apply for a drop curb as part of the process. But as part of that, as incorporating into that, obviously those that necessarily don't or haven't, then we then look to see how they can be accommodated as best we can within that situation, whether that's using side streets necessarily or whether that's lay-bys to incorporate that if that's possible.
So that's around, that would be on the Elizabeth Way roundabout discussions.
So there's also, in terms of you'll be able to see the audit in terms of when we talk around bus stops and crossings, and actually the plans there have that audit laid out on them, so you can see which properties haven't got have a driveway but don't have a drop curb, and you also see the ones that have been highlighted as not having a driveway. So we can not, that's the focus of the workshop, is the bus stops and crossings, but that can help inform that, and we can take that in.
Good. And now Councillor Austin and Councillor Manning. Yeah, please.
My first question is about the timescales in just trying to work out what it is. So in November we got the final group with bus lanes.
Yep.
And then you said there's a public meeting in November, December.
Probably, I don't think November. December's a bad month.
Sorry?
December's not a great month to hold another program.
No, but I mean, so we've got workshops finishing, we've got the work then compiling it all happening, and then you've got the public meeting.
Yeah.
And then there's Christmas. And then there's the next public meeting. So realistically, at that point, how much change can be made and how much input from the public at that stage would you be listening to still make iterative changes? So that's my first question. The second one is in terms of all the modelling that's happening. There's quite a lot happening alongside all this that we've referred to a little bit about the smart technology and how some of those things are going to have an impact on certain maybe change times of buses or bus stops and that kind of thing. So how is that taken to the modelling? And then the third thing, the questions that a number of people have been asking about data. Can I ask about the access and the openness of that data?
And now Councillor Manning.
Yeah, just some questions, a couple of comments. I think it's probably just worth saying that the proposals that we've voted through are not actually the rest of the campsite proposals. They're a modified and, in my view, lessened version of the rest of the campsite proposals. But that having happened, can we make sure that much more of this is advertised online? I just had a look on the City Deal website, sorry, Greater Cambridge Park Road this week, the website and the, the two workshops, one next week, is not on there.
We haven't yet formalised that the workshop will happen.
Well, I mean, tonight's meeting's on here, so...
Yeah, but tonight we're discussing this, so we can't exactly...
Okay, well...
But that we're going to have a workshop on the 19th.
So presumably we're going up tomorrow. Yeah. So that's I'm just making the point that we need to get online because we need to get the best.
I suppose I'm just trying to get you to get your questions out before we go into...
So the second very specific question you mentioned in your presentation, Mitchell's Corners for Elizabeth Way. Does that mean Chesterton Road? If it does mean Chesterton Road, are you aware that local councils are talking about parking control schemes in the offside streets, part of which may involve having parking spaces on Chesterton Road? And if not, we kind of need to tie those together. And final thing, always my favourite topic, talking about lengths of bus lanes and how do you find that out? Please, can we get some trialling? I know I mentioned this at every single meeting. The length of bus lanes is a very, very easy one to trial, and it would give us much better results, much more confidence for residents than theoretical modelling.
Maybe if we answer perhaps the last one, because it was not to the issues about the workshops, and then it will pass back to Councillor Austin's on the workshop.
Trialling is very difficult when we're looking at 2031 traffic levels and growth of Water Beach. So trialling what's currently the situation doesn't necessarily help us through the future situations. So I'm afraid that's why we're using modelling, which is based on what's happening at the moment. So I can't see that it will assist us in the process of predicting our future needs.
With regard to your second point about the park on Chesterton, I've just been made aware today I've seen the email and the link, so I've contacted the parking team and I'll obviously find out more about that. So thanks for raising it again.
And now to the timescales, the public input, the taking into account of technical changes and the openness and access to data, which was...
So the openness and access to data, so that we have, I'm trying to think what that means, LNVR. So we've got a report that talks around the modelling. It's a summary of the modelling that's been undertaken, and I believe that's already published on the website previously, from when we undertook the first set of modelling. And you know, as we go forward with that, that's got a summary of the kind of data we've seen being inputted to the model to inform the sort of discussions that are coming forward. The other elements of the question, in terms of timescales, obviously yes, we appreciate it's a very compact schedule that's kind of limited by the fact that the board wants us to come back to them with a preferred option in March, and that means we have to have something kind of by the end of January to put forward in the process that it takes to get in front of the board. That's why we've tried to focus on the particular areas that have come up as been highlighted as particular concerns still by the LLA. We do have the concept design, and that is a basis. What we can't do necessarily, we can't, you know, we've got that far, we need to be refining it rather than wholesale changes to it, and that's why we think we can accomplish this in preferred option, because we're refining the design that's there rather than looking at whole big significant changes. We've already had those discussions to get to this point.
And then the issue was, at the end of that process, how much potential is there for further input from the public?
So by the end, when we present this back in January, I would hope that it is the kind of approaching the final version of the preferred option design. There may be the option. No, January.
Yes, you've got those.
So in January, I hope that we are presenting the final version, or approaching the final version that we'll put to the board. There may be the opportunity for some minor tweaks, but there won't be time, obviously, for some wholesale changes to that design. It will go to the board, and then it will go to full public consultation, so there will be further opportunity for the public and other statutory stakeholders to comment on that final design, on that preferred option. The final design is a difficult word. Some people use it for other things, so I think we'll start using the preferred option design. So the preferred option design will be consulted on through, I think it's May. We need to fit it sort of so it doesn't interfere with the permit period for elections. So I think it's programmed from May, June, and that will run for 6 weeks, I think. And we'll come back, and then there'll be further revisions to the design, which will then go again to the executive board for the last time before it goes into a detailed engineering design phase.
There was also the technical smart technology,
Yeah.
yes,
How
because
that they would be taken account of.
So a key element is bus priority at junctions. Some obviously future technologies that we can't predict at this time. We don't have an ability necessarily to, you know, are we all going to be in flying cars? We can't kind of do that. But in terms of what's in the realms of what we know could be implemented, because obviously we're looking to implement this in a couple of years to then last, just to see us through to the future. Those technologies are being looked at and being implemented, and we have the ability to put those into the model to see the inputs on them, particularly the junctions where they're most likely to be used. And some of those are already in there at the moment, but in terms of the bus priority, that's something we need to look at in terms of triggering that through junctions and how that might affect the bus lane rates. But either way.
I have to let you all know that at last smart technology has reached the X5. If one gets on the X5 now, you can actually put your card, your debit card, on their machine. They've got these newfangled machines, and it works. It works. So they've come to that technology just on the X5 so far. Now there's Councillor Bird, then I see, Michael Page, and then Michael Bond and Michael Mike.
I just wanted to confirm the formal consultation period is scheduled from mid-May to the end of June.
Okay, thanks for that.
Next year. I've just looked in the book.
Thanks very much for that. And now, Councillor Bird.
My question is about your bus stops. I do hope you're going to really look seriously at the bus stops, not have these floating bus stops, because I've had many residents complaining about the bus stop, especially the new one in Green Inn Road, and they're not suitable for disabled people and elderly, and mothers with babies, because kids can just run across and a bike can be coming along. So I hope you really look seriously at the bus stop.
Will you do the workshop next week?
No, I can't get to that one, but I know I will make sure somebody's there to speak up.
there'll be a number of options that we've, as Paul said, that we've identified as potentials, and then I think we're going to have a couple for our discussions with Stagecoach today. So we're going to put it as kind of in those tables, it's kind of a preference, so indicating a scoring maybe, or we're just bottoming out how that will work in the workshop in terms of, so we're trying to indicate to nail down what people's preferences are, seeing where there's difference of opinion. We're not going to be there saying this is the bus stop. It's the whole point of those workshops is to get views back on different options that come forward.
And now Michael Page, Mike Sargent and Martin Starr.
Yes, I'd just like to Councillor Burton and try to get the workshop meeting.
Good, thank you. Right, good.
Am I allowed to ask a question to Beth Durham about communication and openness? Beth, I've been trying to navigate my way around the website for this meeting and prior meetings and future meetings, and having a really hard time finding the information I need. On the previous website, there was quite a handy thing. It was a calendar. You could click through month by month, and then there were highlighted dates where you clicked on that and you could see what was going on. I really missed that. Now they have that on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Mayor's portal, really good. But on our one, I'm having a really hard time finding the meetings and the documents that I want. So is that something you could be working on for us, please?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll know that we went live with the new website in July. It was the basic version, and we knew there were teething problems, and we absolutely wanted to get feedback from people on how they were using it or what they couldn't find. We've had quite a lot of feedback, and we're going to make some changes to improve it. But I'd welcome speaking to you outside of the meeting just to understand how you would like it to work, and then we'll see what we can do. But certainly having events calendar on there, yes.
I look like
Yep, my own website.
Mike Sargent, then Martin Starr, and then we'll have a response.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify about the crossings. You talk about bus stops and crossings. When you were saying it, I was assuming it was to do with crossings from one side of Milton Road to the other. What is being done about the Copenhagen crossing? Because I don't think we've fully bottomed that out yet in terms of the design. Where will you be looking at that? Because I guess we will want to be involved as representatives of the LLF to look at what's planned for Copenhagen crossings. Perhaps what they are as well. Some people have not been involved before.
Good. And Martin.
Thanks, Chair. So I was rushing to sort of not take up so much time, but I'm neglected to give my apologies for being late. You knew I was coming late, because I was coming straight from Development Plan's Scrutiny Subcommittee thing at the Guildhall. But also I had to take a call on route from the solicitor about this local casework that's very important, so I apologise for being even later still.
We did, yes, acknowledge.
My apologies for being late as well.
We did, yeah. And Peter Saris, I left off the list of apologies, but perhaps if we can have the response, are the Copenhagen crossings going to be included in the workshops? And if we could have a recitation of what they are.
So sorry, was it? Copenhagen Crossing. So Copenhagen Crossing is where essentially there's a number of side roads that come into Milton Road. A Copenhagen Crossing gives cyclists the priority instead of, so as you're cycling down Milton Road, rather than cyclists having to stop every time they get to a side road to check the traffic's coming, they have priority, and it's up to the vehicles coming feeding onto Milton Road or feeding off Milton Road to consider cyclists at that point. And pedestrians, yeah. So those are called Copenhagen crossings, so those are literally Copenhagen. Those have been an essential part of what's been put forward by the LLF in terms of consideration of how their side roads should be treated. So I guess in terms of the Copenhagen crossing, each junction has to be looked at, each side road has to be looked at independently in terms of how we implement it. We are fully on board, and that's in the design to incorporate Copenhagen crossings on each of the side roads. I think just within the timescales we've got, to have a meeting on every single one, we won't be able to process that design. When we present to you the final concept, we will have in that, I can guarantee there will be Copenhagen crossings, exactly the technicalities of how it's delivered are kind of an engineering issue really. I think rather than necessarily something we need further LLF feedback into on that particular element. I'm not sure what is it. Maybe you can elaborate in terms of where you feel that might be needed to feed in.
Well, I suppose my concern is it gets dropped in at the last minute and we're not happy with it, and then we're in November, if you like. And so I would have thought we somehow should have earlier size of them for contributions.
We can present that when in November. That still gives us kind of December and January to make it. But there's only so many. It will be a technicality of how we deliver the Copenhagen crossing rather than options. Maybe it's a kind of a style of how to reach a junction, which will make sure that pedestrians and cyclists have that priority. Technicalities and safety around how we do that is probably something that means there's less to debate because it'll be decreed by the safety elements of delivering that element.
Watch this space.
I know that Councillor Manning's got another question, but does anybody who hasn't spoken have a question that they'd like to ask about the forward plan, the workshops and so on? So we'll have Councillor Manning, then, the person there, and then and at the back, and then here in the front. So that'll be 4 we'll have.
Just a very, very quick comeback on the comment about triangles. The point of doing trialling is it allows you to verify your theoretical models. It's done elsewhere in the world. I just want to make that point.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to probably echo Councillor Bird's comment, but regarding the bus workshop, that is a weekday, and at the moment there's nothing online. And is there an advertising strategy? I assume if you are seeking to address bus users, you might be advertising on the bus routes currently and sort of trying to get as many people in. And what would also worry me is people who are dependent on buses may be less able to come to the workshop in the late evening. So how are we going to ensure that they actually have good accessibility to this to these consultations?
Good. And then there were 2 here. Sorry, I forgot the word. Yes.
Mine was really about the data that's going into the modelling. I don't know if it's feasible to do some sort of scrutiny of that in advance of the modelling actually taking place. Because I'm certainly concerned myself that these models are very complicated. You're making a lot of different estimates and assumptions about the future. And I'm pretty sure you could come out with whatever result you want out of those. There are so many different inputs. And so in order for us to have some confidence in what you're actually producing, is it possible that there can be some scrutiny about the data before it goes in? Because I'm sure you can, in some ways, you could sort of tweak the data that you're putting in to get whatever result you want. And then it really concerns me that all things like the bus lane then seem to be being very much driven by what the modelling is going to show. And those bus lanes are really going to have a huge impact on this scheme. They take a huge amount of space, and if they're in places where they're not needed, you're potentially reducing the possibilities for improved cycling, the verges, things like that. So it's really crucial that we don't overdo it on those. And I know we need the bus lanes where we need to be, to enable the buses to travel where they need to go. But I think it's really crucial that we scrutinise very carefully where they actually are. And it worries me that everything seems to be so dependent on these models.
So we've been told that the safety audit is in progress. Wouldn't it be a good idea to wait for the results of the safety audit and to have the safety audit published before some of the workshops, particularly the workshop on the Elizabeth Way roundabout and on the bus lanes between Elizabeth Way roundabout and Richards Corner?
Bus stops and advertising in relation to bus stops, the data into the modelling and publishing the safety audit. Oh, buses, yeah.
You highlight a difficulty that I believe has previous project managers have highlighted to me, and it is difficult to get a wide range of views from especially bus users, bus commuters, because they don't necessarily have such high interest in attending these kind of workshops and groups. as perhaps the residents who will be immediately affected on Milton Road do. So we do struggle to get those kind of people to the workshops. We have tried to send out some invitations to people that we think may represent. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to pick up on that point. You were talking about the workshop here, bus stops, and that is a limited capacity workshop. I think
Yes, it is. Yeah.
People, so it's not going to provide for anyone to come along to because there simply wouldn't be capacity, and I think it's going to be a focus with different stakeholders, including LLF members, and I'm afraid I don't know the answer of whether we have bus user group representation there. But the point I wanted to make is...
We certainly have bus chief executive Stagecoach there and possibly as managing director.
Yeah, but the point I wanted to make is there will be further consultation. We'll absolutely be targeting bus users to give us their views on the concepts that go out. And we have done that previously through advertising on buses, attending transport hubs to gather information when people arrive or are leaving. And also, I know the MP has set up a new bus use forum for the city, so we would hope to engage with them as well. So I just wanted to make the point that we can't necessarily get all of those people there at a workshop that's limited, but we'll certainly do that during the
I mean, what we'd ask is those members of the LLF attending are hopefully ideally bus users, or we have, you know, if there's a case of who's attending the LLF and turns to that limited number, there'll be best bus users. What we're looking at is the bus stop locations along Milton Road, so I guess those are residents getting off the buses to so therefore...
The non-stop.
Well, okay. So that's part of the discussion, obviously. We've got Stagecoach there to indicate where the future bus provision might be, and then I think it makes sense to also be talking residents around the bus stop locations, because those are the people that will be using those bus stops. Given that why else would you get off necessarily on Milton Road?
So Councillor Bird's been invited prior to this meeting, no? Odd. It'd be interesting to know how the invitation process has worked then.
A week ago we sent out a draft invite.
We should include
should have gone to all the other members.
It did.
Yeah, it came in this afternoon.
Oh, yes, it's
I
certainly
sent
gone.
it out last week.
Yeah, it did go out last week. I think sometimes the people are checking their email. But I've got two more people down, Councillor Kevin Price and Barbara Taylor, and then if there's is there anybody else that's got a pressing issue, that please, about the workshops and about the forward plan and so on, which is, because the purpose of this was to get feedback in terms of the understanding of the work plan and any issues arising there. Now I can see, let's stop at 4. We'll have Councillor Smart, then Barbara Taylor.
And the lady at the back of her hand up, she asked a question we haven't answered.
Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
So that's scrutiny of the data. So we have already had Royal Haskoni, another consultant, review a lot of the modelling when it was looked at in terms of how we were looking at the implementation of Dutch style roundabouts. So we have had another consultant look at our modelling. We are using industry standard. It isn't just, there is some scrutiny there. And we're also following a DFT, it's called a web tag process. So you have a way in which a model has to be put together, which follows the Department for Transport guidelines to stop it being put together in a way that makes you generate whatever you want, as you said. So that's where there is some assurance, there is some quality control in terms of how that's done. And I guess that's a kind of professional thing to get that. You're right to ask that to be checked, but we can't really go out to the public to, as you say, it would take so long for us to pick through all elements of it. We have to do that within a professional review, which is what has occurred and will be continue to do so as we go forward.
I'm sorry, I was diverted by the intervention because we've got to address the question about we're having a safety audit done, and why can't we get the safety audit published and comprehended before we move into workshops? And then we'll go to the questions from Councillor Price, Barbara Taylor, and yes. Right.
So the safe for Elizabeth Way.
So the safety audit at this stage, it's just the first stage safety audit. It's not necessarily something we would publish, it's just to give me or the consultants an idea of if any of the elements they've designed and the concept design actually may cause a big issue. So, yeah, as I said, I've commissioned that first stage safety audit just to give us the basis on which we can kind of go through the detailed design. In the meantime, we can still discuss all of the conceptual elements that we plan to discuss in the workshop, but I would hope that we have some results from the safety audit before we obviously present a detailed or go into a more detailed, at the stage when Neil actually starts putting that detailed design together. I would hope we have the results of the first stage safety audit.
How do you feel when it might be?
Not yet.
This first week,
I haven't had that information yet.
When we're designing it in the first place, we do safety audits internally within the company. So there has been safety that's been reviewed as part of what we've gone through the design, but obviously not independent in terms of the council officers reviewing actual safety. When it comes to something like Elizabeth Way, as you'll see from the slides, we said particularly we'll talk to residents with access points onto Elizabeth Way roundabout. Those are of particular concern. We wouldn't, in this day and age, we wouldn't really design an access onto a major roundabout, so we'll be working particularly on those elements. We know those will probably be identified as an issue, but the concept, and we'll be looking into how we deal with that in a more detailed sense. So we've already highlighted that particular issue that we'll need to try and bottom out in a more detailed design of how people access their drives in not ideal locations. There will be last thing to say is there will be other stages as we go forward in different stages of the design. This is a stage 1 safety audit. There will be a number of other stages that are undertaken, so I give you assurance that we will get to the point where something isn't, having gone through a lot of audit process on safety before we get to the stage of implementation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased that the issue of bus users was raised, because bus users are probably one group that are involved that actually don't have any representation from anybody. And I would think one thing is there is no group. There are plenty of residents' associations speaking, on behalf of other residents, but there is no group that is speaking on behalf of bus users. I do think it's not beyond our wit to speak to Andy Campbell and maybe get some advertising on the buses about what's going on and how people could get involved, what would help them to get involved, what time is best to hold a meeting and where for bus users to be able to get to. I mean, it's one thing talking to Andy Campbell, he runs it, he has an interest in one way. The other view is to get the feeling and the views of those people that use buses regularly, not the person that gets on the bus occasionally, but the people that are using the buses to get to work, get to the hospital, get to the railway station. We need to get them involved.
There aren't any such users on Milton Road. They don't use it regularly to get to the hospital or to the station because they can't get a bus. We need bus users. I can give you potential bus users, lots of them.
Yeah. Perhaps what we can do is the MP Daniel Zeichner did hold a bus users meeting some Saturdays ago, and I think when you get back with his office, then they've got a list of people who were involved in that, and so it's clearly people who were interested in such a group, and the group itself was supposed to then generate further meetings and so on. But if we get in touch with Daniel Zeichner, then we can...
It's obviously a balance, isn't it? You've got to have the operators. We can have the bus stops there, but it doesn't mean the bus is going to stop unless the bus operator supports, the service. So there is a balance between talking with Andy, or whoever the dominant bus operator is associated at the moment. So we'll be Andy, in terms of making sure why is he maybe not supporting certain stops, would the change of those mean that we're better supported? It's balanced. We've got that, the buses have to be serving the bus stops to make them viable in the first place, and if they're not, why we need to explore that in the workshop in terms of why they're not. being used at the moment.
With Barbara.
Well, my question was really just when we're deciding where to have the bus stop, is just to have a notice on the bus stops to ask the people to give you feedback. People are actually waiting there at those buses.
Yeah, that's it.
On their phone.
But you haven't got long, have you? You've got to get those notices out tomorrow to get
I mean, in some of these, we could still put those notices out and get that feedback. The workshop is to get initial views. We're not saying that at the end of the workshop we're going to have a fixed conclusion that this is where the bus stops will be, because we may have very different views in those groups. So it's an opportunity to get as wide a response as we can from those 25 people in that session, but it doesn't preclude us from going and seeking additional over the period we've got, if we feel that that's the best way to do it.
And what we do know is that through the workshops there's been absolutely a message that the one at Union Lane and Arbury Road, that stop there is in the wrong place. We know that just from the workshops of the past, so there has been some information and responses and so forth in relation to bus stops already.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is that local knowledge of kind of tweaking these things. You know, if we know that a bus stop, if it was just moved, would be, 100 metres, 50 metres in a different direction, it's causing an issue at the moment that you see every day in terms of traffic, particularly building in a certain area, then that's the kind of local knowledge that's really handy to get from the workshop session. Really.
Good. And now if we can have our last.
Okay, my question relates to workshop number 3 about the Elizabeth Way roundabout. Will there be discussion in that whether the lights will be on, the traffic lights will be on 24/7? And is it possible, related to that, is it possible for technology to monitor the flow of traffic along Milton Road and turn the lights off when they're not needed? And related to that, in a previous meeting, you said that your modelling couldn't take account of cyclists going around the Elizabeth Way roundabout. Has that been changed? And have you been able to model cyclists going around the roundabout?
So in terms of traffic lights being turned off, generally we will be designing, in terms of safety feature, we're ultimately designing how we're going to use the traffic lights. The key with the traffic lights is also enabling them to talk to other lights, particularly at Arbury Road junction. So we're not necessarily planning to have any ability there to have the lights being turned off in the off-peak periods. There will be phased with the Arbury Road. That's the decision that has kind of come forward in terms of that. Yeah, the signal team in the council doesn't support the role of having traffic lights that then aren't used. So that's a central decision from the council in terms of the safety concerns they have around that. So that's the current thinking.
There are residents in Hurst Park Avenue who fear they won't be able to get out onto Milton Road once the lights are in, and that they'll have to rat run through to Arbury Road.
Hurst Park Avenue won't actually have a signal on Highway Avenue. Do you mean Highway Avenue or you mean Hurst?
No, I mean Hurst Park Avenue.
Well, the model for across the whole is across the whole length of Milton Road and covers the side roads, so we can certainly look at what's coming out of the model in terms of how we change the junctions and how that might affect potential queuing that occur on those side roads, and that will be a consideration in terms of what.
Something you'll put a box or something so that people don't actually block the exit from Hurst Park Avenue.
That's something we could certainly look at. We could look at solution boxes at that point if it was felt that it was going to be an issue at that point.
Good. Now, I did say that was the last, but please, could these be the...
respond to the cycle modelling?
The cycle modelling. So, just to clarify on that, so the model, particularly at the junctions, allows for the cycling to be accommodated in terms of the signal timing. So when we've got priority, say, for cycling, or we've got crossings for cycling as part of that, then we have factored in cycles to that. So that just means that the vehicle traffic won't be able to move during those periods because the cyclists will be moving around the junction. We've undertaken renewed surveys to understand the current levels of crossings occurring at the moment from cyclists, and from that we'll be able to predict kind of how long crossing periods need to be green to allow those cyclists to make those movements. as part of the model. So we are accounting for the cycling at each of the junctions going forward.
So you mean an advanced green for cyclists?
Potentially, yeah, we can accommodate that within that as part of the design. When we're looking at priority for public transport and I guess cyclists at the same time, and also as part of the design, there's crossings there where it's kind of phases that allow pedestrians and cycle crossing, and we can the change in those will impact how the junction works, and that's factored in.
Yes, Matt, and Rob.
Yeah, just want to ask the officer on that point about saying there's a council policy of not paying off lights. Is it something that you believe could potentially be beneficial? Because if it is, then we need to get that towards, they need to get something to the Highways and PD Infrastructure Committee to raise the idea of changing the policy. I'm not saying we can make a change, but if it's something you feel may be a benefit in your opinion, then we need to raise it and get it there.
I think what we've been looking at is the main benefit will come from being able to work all the signals, all the junctions together, and therefore I think if we're putting in a signalised junction, then we should maintain that because it works with the other junctions. If we take it suddenly out, then it's not working with Harbour Road Junction, it's not working with other junctions on the road, it can't speak to those other junctions. Potentially so much, but
so what the safety implications of temporary...
So I think we can discuss the detail of life, but essentially the point is we need to get something, I'd have to take it up, but we need to get something from you to say to the good beforehand, potentially.
I think if we're designing it for a signals, then we should be looking at signals being put in place rather than having it as an option where we design for signals and then we're turning off and potentially issues with visibility and things come forward. And you would design it differently if it's not a signalised junction.
Right, Matt.
I'm happy to go after Councillor Smart if you want to go quickly before me. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm very concerned about safety at bus stops. And can you tell us at least a little bit how many of the designs that you've come up with have full separation between people walking, cycling, and motor vehicles?
Well, can I just say, isn't this an issue for the workshops that we've said that we're going to have, and you will be there, Matt?
Well,
so that
I was hoping, because most people won't be there, and I would just, and this is also the first I've learned that I will be there, so thank you. But it was just a quick overview of the...
We have a number of options that we presented of varying degrees of, and what we want to gauge is people's views on those. So we've literally kind of put down all our ideas of what would be, how we could operate it, how we can have this usage between those pedestrians that are waiting there for a bus, cyclists whizzing past, pedestrians that want to walk past. How do we accommodate that within, a restricted space that we've got?
Now
we're going to come forward with a lot of different options, and we're looking for kind of feedback on what people's views are to those.
I'm worried about the motor vehicles whizzing past, and that's why I was curious how many of the options had full separation between all three categories.
I mean, by you mean a lane by then, in terms of taking the bus?
No, motor vehicles. Part of the purpose of having the protected cycle lanes is so that people don't have to mix with motor vehicles, don't have to mix with buses. Nobody wants to mix with buses when they're on a bike. So that's why I was curious to ensure that bus stops would maintain the protection for everybody.
Yeah, I don't think any of the designs mix cycles or pedestrians with most vehicles.
Yeah, that's not our aim to do that. So yeah, we've really gone through some of them and taken them out because we didn't feel they were appropriate anyway.
Do they mix people cycling and pedestrians?
One of them does, which you won't like.
But the whole point, Matt, is we've got to have a number of different options, and then as Justin said, that's part of the workshop, to get people's views, get your view and get everyone else's view at that workshop session in terms of whether we can come to a consistent view on what they're all compromises to some extent because we've got restricted widths. So we'll present as many ideas as we can possibly come up with to you guys, and then ask some kind of ranking in terms of where preferences and what comes from that. It will then have a great influence on what we're putting down the road, where we can accommodate.
Thank you for your help.
Good. Did you have something, Councillor Simon?
I did, Chair, so I'll be really quick. So just a couple of things we mentioned, data from the woman at the back and safety audits, which I've mentioned before. I'm surprised to hear that the Greater Cambridge Partnership isn't going to make those public, because I would have thought that anyway residents could ask for an freedom of information on that if they wanted to, and that should be made available. I fancy why shouldn't. So why wouldn't we make that available?
Made available. I mean, if the public want to see the first stage of safety audit, as long as there's no issues with showing that.
Right, yes, I think Councillor Smart said it can be a way I think what we need to do is what will come forward from that. We'll have the safety audit, and then with the design process we need to move forward, and we'll be operating with that as we come forward. It just might mean that when that information comes out, by the time that's in the public domain, we've already incorporated that, we're already moving forward in design. But in terms of whether it can come out into the public domain, I don't honestly know the legal elements around it, but if it's possible to FOI out, then certainly it would be out in the public domain.
I'm not worried about publishing, so that's, I'll look into whether that's normally done or process of publishing it, if it can be done. I don't mind doing it.
Now, we'd like to conclude by saying thank you very much, but I said halfway through that everybody here will introduce themselves, which we'll do now because everybody's here, but I must apologise to Councillor Austin, who had to leave for another meeting, but she was the one sitting there. But could we come around and start with you, Michael, and just introduce yourself?
Michael Bond, Old Chesterton Residents Association.
Michael Page, First Party State Residents Association.
Carlton Estate, Milton Road Residents Association.
And Mike Sargent, West Chester City Councillor.
Paul Van Gogh, Project Manager. Great Cambridge Partnership.
Neil Kingston, Project Manager for WSP.
Kevin Price, Councillor for King's Hedges, Chair of the Greater Cambridge Partnership Assembly. Deputy Councillor for Housing, Cambridge City Council, Deputy Leader. There you go, that's two.
I should have said congratulations to Councillor Price because he was elected at the most recent assembly as the chair. So, yes, great applause. That's great. Oh, well, I have to say it was good because I was coming from elsewhere and he managed to fit me into the program, so I appreciate that very much. I was speaking for the LOF, so it wasn't a personal thing, but I appreciate it for the LOF. I'm Jocelyn Scott, Councillor for Arbury in the County Council.
I'm Councillor Jerry Berg, East Chesterton, and Vice Chair of the LLF.
Ian Manning, County Councillor for the County Division of Chesterton.
In Dudley, Westchester City Council.
Claire Richards, County Councillor for Castle.
Martin Smart, King's Hedges Councillor.
So let me say thank you very much to everybody here, particularly Paul Van Gogh and Bill Holden for responding to all the questions at the end of the presentation. Yes, Michael?
There's two people who are interested in going to the bus stop workshop. Can they register that interest here tonight?
Absolutely, yes.
Who will?
So, could the person with whom to register please stand up so that everybody can identify them?
Yeah, I'll put a form, I'll hand them form at the end, and then anyone can
And we can reiterate to interested people that are possible or any in the room.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I should have said, Councillor Margaret has been here also from Chesterton. And so could we please have, first of all, thank you very much to everyone who came to all the questions Commissioner Gray. And could people please register for, sorry, could people please register for the interest in the workshops, one on the bus stops, one on the trees, and then register their interest if they are interested in the concept design groupings too, that were referred to here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello. The workshop next week will be starting time 6 o'clock. Starting time 6 o'clock. Thank you.
So can I just ask you, how will the applications be assessed?
Well, it's limited to 25 people, and then if more than 25 people register an interest, it will be done on trying to find the most balanced.
So what I've looked at the form and I can't see any, apart from the name of an organisation, there's nothing there to say what anyone would bring to the workshop.
How would you filter it out?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Well,
what I'm saying is, if I want to make an application, and I do, because there's no room on that form to explain what I would bring to the workshop, or indeed for anyone else to do so. So how will the applications be assessed, I'm saying, in the absence of information, in the absence of people putting forward saying who they are and what they would bring?
Okay. Well, we'll take it back and look at who's registered, and then we'll have to judge it. And then maybe perhaps we reach out.
So it's not just going to be the 25 or so people who are here who are going to have this opportunity?
Well, we haven't decided on who's coming yet, so we need to carry on looking at who to invite, try and invite a broad range of people from across Greater Cambridge.
And the workshop on the 19th will take place, even though the local liaison forum tonight didn't actually agree that. Is that correct?
It's been agreed by Jocelyn, the chair.
When did that happen?
I don't have a specific date.
Did that happen before this evening?
You'll have to ask Jocelyn. I don't actually know.
Well, we were told this evening that the reason it's not on the Greater Cambridge City Deal, the Greater Cambridge Partnership website, is because it hasn't yet been agreed. And yet you're telling me that it has been agreed.
No, I can confirm it has been agreed.
But I didn't see that happen since we were told it hadn't been agreed.
The timescales, Jocelyn agreed. I don't have the third piece. You'll have to speak with Jocelyn.
But we just heard this evening that the reason that it's not on the events calendar is that the local liaison forum didn't agree it. Hasn't agreed it.
I can.
That was the response.
I personally didn't hear that, but I can look. If you want to show me the footage, then we can have a look.
Well, I'm just wondering whether the event on, I think it's the 19th of September, is going to go ahead, because we've been told today that it's not on the calendar because it's not been confirmed by the local liaison forum. I didn't see any decision get made tonight on any matter, in fact.
As I've already said, Jocelyn has already agreed the schedule.
But I asked you if it happened prior to today's meeting.
Yes, it would.
Okay, well, thanks very much, because that wasn't. She didn't intervene when that question and answer was going on to say that was going to happen.
Okay, I didn't hear a brush over that. I didn't actually hear that question.
The two workshops, one next week, is not on there.
We haven't yet formalised that the workshop will happen.
Well, I mean, tonight's meeting's on here, so...
Yeah, but tonight we're discussing this, so we can't exactly...
Okay, well...
But that we're going to have a workshop on the 19th.
So presumably we're going up tomorrow. Yeah. So that's what I'm just making a
question. But no, it has been agreed for the 19th. But you can register your interest on that.
The workshops there, should we wait to be notified? Or
Yeah, so we'll take it back.
I think there's 3 different sheets.
Coming up.
Yeah.
I'm reminding them up.
So, and where will the workshop be?
People have been essentially putting together a little bit of an application.
Ask him.
No, it's simply just a baby on those. But it doesn't.
Is it just the 2 that you've got dates for? Is it those as well? Yeah. I'm interested in all of them. I just put all of them down.
It's not necessarily an application. Well, we'll take it back to us and have a look at it.
Because I mean, there's some of them that are different angles, but I don't know. That's really interesting. But I don't know whether.
Well, we'll try and judge it. Just look there, I don't know very much. If 10 or 15 people well, yes, it does.
Yes, but not if I'm a member.
Well, you would.
I can't work that out representing. I don't see very much. I would say that's right there. Yeah, I'm assuming that they would be representing.
the issue.
But
Yeah, but
so
we're
actually this is false.
She's a member of.
So a member, but
that's not an official person, you know, it's just an individual who happens to sign up to this. There are many resident members.
But the design workshops, space for Milton Road residents. For the workshops, then everybody is
If we have any issues,
I make the recommendation.
it's not an application.
Even though you're trying to use this is it. There's no other way.
Yeah,
You've got to come here in person.
That's worried. Yeah, yes.
You just sat on the panel that's making the recommend when they gave out these 25
Thanks, Jonathan.
So 14 people who came here this evening have signed up to attend the workshops and design groups. I'm one of them. I've put my name on the sign-up sheet as well. You can see even some members of the local liaison forum, and I think even a councillor has signed up as well. I and others have asked how these applications to go to the workshops and design groups will be assessed, particularly as we haven't given any information about who we are, or we've not been asked for any information about who we are and what we would bring to the workshops and design groups. I have written down that I'm a resident of Milton Road and that I report on what's been going on at these meetings and about the project. I've been told by the officer who's taking the applications that the workshops are actually going ahead, even though there was no decision tonight from the local liaison forum for them to go ahead, and that the reason was given by the officers that they're not on the events list because the local liaison forum hadn't agreed them. We were told that the chair of the local liaison forum had in fact agreed them before this evening's meeting. All incredibly confusing.